So as the title says, what I'm going to talk about are all the positives of being in this hobby. I got a little bullet list here. I'll try not to bore too many people. When I get done talking about a few things, then I'm going to lay up a rudder. It's one I've done before, but I just go through there and I make different iterations. So yeah, it's a great time to be in this hobby, but why is that? Probably because of all the stuff that was available in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, probably even before then, you can still get it today. A good example would be a buddy of mine. He showed up, this is a couple years ago. He got on eBay. This was when the electric thing took off. And he was buying these IC motors new in the box and, lightly used for pennies on the dollar. And he literally had these things in a garbage bag. He brought them over and we set them all out on the bench. So they're RC motors, control line. I mean, everything was there. So there's downsides. I mean, you get out there and there's no kits and there's some things that aren't available. If the kits are out there, a lot of times they're out there in a form of collector's items. So let's just say you want to build a Sig Twister or something, or a Ringmaster. Then you're going to have to pay top dollars for that kit. But with the Stun Hanger channel, this channel, all the ones out there that provide endless information, you can take that kit and actually trace around it and build it. Some of the things that I cover on here are composites, which will lead you down a rabbit hole. What I intend to do with this composite information as I gather it is take all the information out there commercially and disseminate it to where it all comes together on a specific use. A good example will be this rudder I'll make if the OBS keeps working. So technology is great, but it's the Achilles heel sometimes. I can lose streams in a second, or the power goes out, or you get a storm, all these hundreds of things. So yeah, that's one of the things. Coming up to today, the things you can actually get today, two channels come to mind, and they're the top of the food chain. And you guys probably already know about him. Ramy RC is a guy that he's been doing this a while. I think I looked at his channel. It goes back 10 years maybe or more. So he's building these airplanes that are just astronomically complex and huge. And they're really showstoppers. He's doing stuff out there that hadn't been done before. Him and Tyler Perry, and there's a few others involved in it. That kind of content is inspirational. It's more entertainment because it's out of the reach of the normal person. The stuff that I do in this shop or Stun Hanger or other channels are more geared to the everyday person. Another one that comes to mind is it's Marco Roulade. I pronounced it wrong. M-A-R-K-O, Marco Roulade, R-O-O-L-A-I-D. So this is a young kid or an adult. I call them kids because I'm so old. But he's pretty much mastered the full spectrum of what you can do. If you watch his channel, he's designing on CAD. It's like Tryon got into this CAD. He's a stunt flyer. But he's mastered CAD, in my opinion, for the modeling. And he's actually 3D printed. He's got composites. He's got a CNC foam cutter. He understands the digital world from actually building the airplane, designing it, and presenting his material online with editing it. So the guy is super talented. So the young kids getting in it today, they can do the simple stuff. They can go on eBay and buy used stuff, join a organization like the National Free Flight Society, PAMPA, If you don't want to get in pattern to where it's super expensive, get in the classic pattern stuff for RC. It's just unbelievable how much is available. So let's see, what else am I going to talk about? The other thing I guess I wanted to touch on, since it's sort of close to my heart, is Pampa. They're working on redoing this thing. And I think it would be great if, when Pampa finally gets a website refined, to take all this old material that's been out here in magazines and that's been published in Pampa as a format of the printed word and pictures, recreate a video, have people step up and say, hey, I'm going to take Paul Walker's whatever it was, building technique or whatever, and we're going to incorporate that. We're going to take, not plagiarize, but take this material that was printed, put it in a video format, edit it. I don't know where I heard it, maybe Bob Hunt. He used to be in the publishing business. You can republish just about anything you put out there in 2 years. So you're going to get a new audience in 2 years. Or you'll be able to actually go back and take this material and refine it and update it. One of the surprising things on this channel you're watching now, Winship Models, the YouTube, 80% of the people watching this content are new. So if I put up a video, and we're talking the last 48 days or, well, 2 or 3 months. If I take a video that's 5 years old or 10 years old, the chances of people actually digging through this big pile of videos and coming up with this material probably slim to none. So it's probably beneficial to rehash some things, especially with Pampa, with the pot of gold they're sitting on with information. Let's see here. Back in the day, if you had a CNC machine, you were rich. It was for commercial people. And fast forward today, you could probably go out and get a Bridgeport mill with a NC numerical control, maybe for, I don't know what they're selling for now. If it's really top-of-the-notch collector mint condition stuff, it's probably 8 or 10 grand. But you can get stuff that's really workable. You can get that probably reasonable, 3,000, 2,000. Even CNC machines, they've got a guy that's advertising a CNC machine. You can move it around on a pallet jack. So he moves it around the shop. I don't know, does different things. But is it super fast? No. But is it precise? Yes. So a lot of these things that are produced are really applicable to the hobby. Garage water jet cutters. I forget. I don't know what the name brand was, but like Brent Williams making control horns, somebody sends them a DXS file or some oddball thing. If he had that capability, or if somebody would, they'd actually take that file, feed it to the machine and cut it, charge the customer an extra for that service. But maybe it's not feasible, I don't know, but that possibility didn't exist in the 80s and 90s. Recreate old material in video format. I covered that. Here's another story. This was 1995. I dug this out. And what it is, it's called SAMPE. Okay, Society for the Advancement of Material Processing and Engineering. This was 1995. I think I bought this in 96, and I was out in Phoenix and I was visiting some family. And SAMPE just happened to be going on the next week. I think it was Anaheim, California, Orange County or something out there. So the plane ride from Phoenix to this SAMPE symposium or whatever you call it was probably half hour, 40 minutes. So I jump on a plane and I go out there. So there's an old story, you don't want to be the smartest one in the room. So I get to Sampy out there, and I'm not kidding you. I'm the dumbest one in the place. So these people are walking around with McDonnell Douglas, Boeing, Raytheon, all these name tags, PhDs, unbelievable skunk works people, right? They're at the top of the heap, and then you've got people maybe from Spalding, they're making sporting goods or carbon fiber bicycles for Tour de France. I know Dan and Randy Rodine from Indianapolis, they went out there a few times. And they were in the automotive industry. Yeah, what do you need?
Are you standing?
No, I'm online.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I'm sitting here talking right now.
Okay. What? See, I don't have a notification.
Oh, you probably don't subscribe to my channel.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Are you really online?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I think I am. The computer says I am. So
I'll let you go.
that's all right. You can talk for a minute.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a great time to be
Yeah.
in the model airplane hobby.
Yeah. It's just a talk session for about 20 minutes, and then I'm going to actually make a rudder, I think. So,
Okay.
okay, Spark. I'll call you back when I'm done.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
All right. So anyway, this Sampy deal, I go out to Sampy, and it's unbelievable. I pick up a stack of these volumes. So when you look into this magazine, well, not a magazine, it's a book. I mean, this is the kind of material you're going to see, right? Here's the breakdown of the chemical, how they cross-link, you know. And it goes through all these case studies. Now, if you're into model airplanes in the hobby part of it, people are going to say, mix a little bit extra hardener, give it an extra pump of hardener, it goes quicker, and you go through all these different scenarios. That isn't the way it works in the real world. So when you read this book, and it's boring, but you'll go through these tape fabric roving and now rods, a new material for composite structures, abstract introduction, and then I'll have graphs, all these formulas. So it's not theoretical, basically. It's stuff that was developed with hard facts and numbers. And there's a lot of useful information in here too. I mean, if you're Howard Rush and some of these guys, you'll dig into these formulas and be immersed. But you know, for people like me, some of it's easy to read, and heck, look at this. They even put pictures in there, you know. There's a picture of filament winding and the destruction testing of it. So is it usable for model airplane stuff? Yes. It lets you know what's out there. I've referred to these before. I've also subscribed to a couple trade magazines like Composite World or something like that. And when I was at Sampy, they had NASA or somebody had a table there. It might have been a recruitment thing, but they had, it looked like a seashell, okay, a helix, and it was 3D printed. I remember picking it up and looking at it, and he explained how it's made, 3D printed. So I think the takeaway on a lot of this stuff, where people want to 3D print things, you can injection mold. I know they love these machines and they want to do their own stuff, which is great. But if you start making parts with the wrong material, you're going down a rabbit hole of destruction. I know you can 3D print metal. There's a place in Indy, I'm pretty sure it's, well, Speedway. They actually sell the powdered metal to aerospace. And don't ask me, I'm not the person that knows all this, but basically they 3D print out of metal and then they put it in a furnace And once they get it so hot, basically, it all cross-links. Um, Going back to the SAMPE thing here with the formulas and the chemicals, let me explain it this way with the mix and epoxy. People say, well, just a little bit more hardener, it goes faster, and it does. But think of epoxy on lay terms as a nut and a bolt. So the bolt would be your resin and the hardener would be the nut. So what happens then, if you look at this thing where it cross-links, it shows all the chemicals cross-linking the atoms, how they work. The nut goes to the bolt. And once it hits that cross-link, I mean, you're done for that atomic level. If you have too much resin floating around in there, then it's floating around looking for a nut. And if you have a lot of extra nuts floating around in the matrix, which would be too much hardener, now you've got a problem where your properties are diminished. And the biggest reason people stick molds, and the reason I've done some experiments, and I'm very, what I want to say, it's very cautious when I ease into it. If you make a mold, and you'll never get 100% where you mix the exact amount of resin to hardener, even if it was poured exactly, then you mix it, there's always a little error. What causes molds to stick is chemicals. That nut is looking for the bolt, and the bolt's looking for the nut. So let's just say on your surface, okay, you've got this mold, and if it's not fully cured and sealed and seasoned, and it's got a complete chemical release, or better yet, wax and PVA, which is a physical barrier, when you make that part, the nuts and bolts here are going to look for the nuts and bolts here. With a chemical release, the nuts and bolts will go through Chemlease, it'll go through Loctite Free Coat, it'll go through a chemical release, and it'll bind. The PVA is like rubber gloves. It's a physical barrier where the nuts and bolts don't find each other. So that's just a quick little talk about releases. And they cover stuff like that in these books. STEM programs like Ed Wask is doing. Kid Venture up in Oshkosh, basically, I don't know how to say it, but they had hands-on stuff for kids, and it's been in the 90s since I've been up there. So it was great because they had the kids could build rockets or build small airplanes and hands-on stuff. And I think they still had people explaining how everything worked. We had a program where we take the kids out with supervision and let them fly control line airplanes. RC, I think they were doing that up there too now. But that's a great thing. Fast forward to what Ed was trying to do, and I'm not sure what he called it. You'd have to go to Stunhanger and look at some of the past hangouts. Ed Wask was talking about it a month ago or two. But it's taken the kids that have the ability to do and the desire to do STEM stuff and putting them in front of educational programs and businesses and the whole realm out there to get these kids involved. So many of these things out there are just hidden. They're not in your face. They're not advertised anymore. They're not promoted. When I retired, I thought I'd do carpentry, and it's not on Indeed, it's not on LinkedIn, it's just not out there for trim carpentry. Basically, to find the people that did that work, I'd go on the job site. And to give you an example, I found this old guy. He was a master. He was in his 60s, 63 at the time. I don't even know if he had a regular phone. I think he did, but some of these guys might be on a flip phone. So, but they're phenomenal. The skill set is phenomenal, but I had to get out on foot on these construction sites and to find these people. They're hidden. And I think part of the problem is get out in the public eye through programs like Ed's doing, schools, STEM programs or whatever. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. I made a bullet list here. But it really is a good time to be in the hobby. There's so much out there for everybody. You just have to look a little bit for it. Now, PAMPA, Precision Aerobatic Model Pilots Association, deals with control line aerobatic airplanes. If you contact the AMA and if you're into RC or whatever, you go through that route, you can find their special interest groups. From your special interest groups, you can narrow it down and find clubs. And then from the club, you know, some of them are RC and control line, some of them are free flight or whatever. So you can start with the AMA and you can just keep whittling it down and find out exactly what's going on in your area and what your interests are. I could rattle on forever, but 3D printing, okay, you don't have a 3D printer, but you want to think about getting into it. A lot of these libraries have places where you can go and probably learn to write the files or take your files in there and they'll print them for you, like clubs. There's a woodworking club in Indianapolis where they have joiners, planers, all these industrial tools. You show up, you pay a monthly fee, your club fee, and then you've got access to all this stuff, plus the people that know how to use it. So I guess the takeaway is don't expect it to be thrown in your lap on a silver plate. Get out and dig for it and look for it. It's out there, believe me. So anyway, what I was going to do is, this was my science fair project on this rudder. The reason why I picked this part to try out this mold release, which I did a short on, the free coat mold sealer and the free coat release, if I screwed it up, it's a small part, it's a small mold, and it's no big deal. I didn't want to go through this process on a 4-foot mold and then have it lock up. So I made one rudder. This is really heavy. It's I think you put a handle on it and use it as an axe, but it's still usable for RC. I just, I wanted to see if I could wet lay up and close the mold immediately and everything would stay in place, and it did. And the most important thing, it released. So then I backed up a little bit on the cloth weight and I went with a cloth that's 3 ounces per square yard, or maybe go meter, who knows what the metric loses me, but anyway, it's 3.2 ounces. I've got 2 layers on each side, so really it's still too heavy, but it's usable for RC. Perfect release again, everything's good, and I incorporated some balsa wood in here, and I'll show you how I do that with the balsa. And I run a little Cavasil and micro around the edge, close the mold, and that worked out good. The one I'm going to make right now is the same thing as this, but I'm going to go 1 layer and I'm going to put the balsa core, so the weight will, probably won't cut it in half, but the weight will be a lot less than this, hopefully half. I'm using the same density of wood out of the same sheet. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lay this up, and it won't take long. And the beauty of this whole thing is actually wet laying it, putting it together, and open it the next day, and it's complete, both sides, and it's all cured. The problem I was getting into, and I knew I was in this problem, is I was laying up these fuselage halves, and this is a pretty decent one. This came out fairly light, but I'd lay up left and right half, and then I'd go through there and trim it. And then when I trim it, and I didn't trim it in the B stage, I trimmed it after it was cured. Then I got to tape it together, and then once you get it taped together and you get these sides lined perfectly, then you got to go down with, you got to take some glass cloth, cut it in narrow strips, and you finagle it down that seam. Well, that's it's a it's a hobby process. It's not really very productive. So anyway, but it gives you a really good part. And the other thing is you're able to actually align it perfect, but you know, if the mold's made right and you got the keys in there, which you'll see on this rudder, it goes together good. So I keep going different iterations. I got one in the hot box here, and that'll be the 6th one of these. And they keep getting lighter and keep getting better. Basically, it'll probably boil down to 1.5 ounce balsa or foam core and 1.5 ounce, so it'll be a sandwich core. Similar to what Joe Daly's doing, I believe. And that's sort of the standard where they're at, you know, to get the weight they need for a control line precision aerobatic airplane. If this was a big F3A, I think, the RC pattern, they might go with 3 ounce core, 3 ounce. I'm not really sure though. So anyway, I keep working my way closer to the part that I really need. So one of the things that's really important on this mold is when you lay this up, this fabric is so light, it's easy to distort. And if you wet this mold out beforehand and you don't position this glass just perfect in there and you try to skew it, forget it, because you're going to have to cut another piece. It gets all wonky on you and it turns into a disaster. So let me slap some of this West Systems boat epoxy into a cup. I'll give that a stir. Hopefully I'll get it in there where I don't have to cut another piece. Yesterday I was making one, I got it in there crooked. I just pulled out and cut another piece. If I'm going to go with this West Systems, and I'm going to do 1 pump of each, 105 resin, and then I'm going to go the 206 slow hardener. And believe me, it says slow, I think it's sort of fast. To me it seems like it's fast. It's comparable to HTR 250 in viscosity. And one of the things I found out too, I pre-wet the mold on this free coat, but when you take the epoxy and you brush into that mold when it's free coat, it just beads up. It doesn't lay flat. It doesn't even come close to laying flat because of the no surface tension on that mold. It's so slick. So the beauty of the West Systems is you're doing a layup and you mix 1 cup at a time, or maybe whatever you got going. You run out of resin, you hit the pump real quick, and you're back in the game. You don't have to mess with a scale. I'd love to have, and I know they've got them, it would be a calibrated scale for any resin. Used to be a place in Greenwood, Indiana that made metering equipment for drug companies, and anything that had to be measured precisely cost an arm and a leg. But man, that'd be nice if you could actually get resin services and have it calibrated. I mean, perfect. I'm sure it's out there, but it's past my budget. Now I mix up this resin, and then what's left over, I'm going to put some micro and some Cabasil on there, and that will be the perimeter, sort of lock it all together. Let me get an acid brush real quick. I tried to have everything ready, but I got to walk over there and grab an acid brush. I'll get one right here. I think I had one. I tried to take these acid brushes and pre-clean them. What I do is put a little acetone on them, and it gets the crud out of it. For some reason I was getting some problems with contamination in the mold. The other thing I do Joe Daly and Bob Hunt. I came up with a bunch of different methods to keep these bristles from coming out. I'd put them in a vise and I'd squeeze the ferrule, clamp it, and smash it. And I'd always lose brushes into the layup. And then I thought, okay, I'll just go with what those guys have been doing, Hunt and Daly. I'll put a little thin CA right there, let it wick into the ferrule where it's crimped, and never had a bristle come out. It's amazing. You fight an idea, somebody says, okay, this is the way to do it, and you fight it, and you end up going right back to what they told you to do in the first place. So I take my brush and I like to mix the epoxy just one last time with the brush. I get down in the corner and all the way around the sides with the brush. Now the bristles will get down into the corner of this cup. So with this fabric, it's 3.2 style 120. It's got a really silk look into it. It's hard to explain. You got to handle it real delicate. Now, the first time I did this, I actually pre-wet the mold. Forget it, because it's not going to matter. It's going to beat up so bad that it's not going to make any difference. One of the things I've noticed on the sample I made are these rudders. Even though I don't pre-wet the mold, I'm not getting any pinholes. There's something about this really super fine fabric that allows the wet out without pre-wetting the mold. Normally with a heavy cloth you brush the resin on the mold and then you actually lay the cloth in it. So what I do, I take this resin and I just tap it, and it takes a second. It's not exactly immediate, but what will happen is that resin will go through this cloth. Okay, you can see it change colors, I'll try to be careful with how much resin I put in there. Normally, if you have a layup that has multiple layers of glass, you don't have to be super careful on the first few layers in the mold, because what you're going to do is you're going to lay more glass on top of it. Wants to do an update. I'm not doing an update right now. So I don't even have my chat box hooked up. That was my mistake. I'll turn this on real quick. Let me see here, Doc. In case you guys have any questions, you can get in the chat if it'll come up. So I'll go around with little dabs of resin and I'll try to pin this thing down. Once I get some of these made, I'll go back and see what the weight is. Now, in order for this mold to close and to be right, the glass has to stay in the mold. I can't have it come out and sticking up, because once this mold closes, there's no way to overlap a seam or anything. So I'm basically building my seam up with Cavasil. Now, would that work with a wing or something that's super critical with strength? Probably not. I don't know. There's different ways of handling that problem. The thing is with these composite parts and all the geometry of these different molds, you're going to have to go up and figure out your cloth schedule and everything you need to do. Each part with different geometry is going to require a different layup sequence, different cloth. So even a professional shop, they're not going to nail it the first time. If they do, it's probably one of these things where they got lucky. They'll make a part, they'll analyze it and look at it. They'll go back and readjust the schedule, the layup schedule, positioning, cloth, the type of cloth, type of resin, who knows. It's not all set in stone, it's variable. I got my chat going, I guess. So this is a 1/4 inch elevator or a 1/4 inch rudder. And these two pieces of wood I'm going to stick in here are 16. They've been sanded a little bit. They're left over from wing sheeting. So they might be just a hair shy of a 16th, which is good. So now that I've got it pretty much tacked around the perimeter, I'm going to try to work it with the brush instead of step on it. I was talking to Sparky with that Perky wing, and I said this general process might be what he's looking for. And if he has, I can't remember looking at his mold, you can take a mold, let's just say you made these two halves, but you didn't put these little bumps in it for the thing to key together. The way around that after the fact is put the part back in the mold, close the mold, and the part actually keys the mold exactly where it was made. Once you do that, then you can drill holes in the flange and bolt the halves together. You can drill holes in the flange and maybe put bushings or brass tubes so when you run the screw and the wing nut through there, it's all aligned. And that would be a way to, after the fact, to adjust this mold to where it aligns to join parts in the mold. So that wet out pretty well. It's a little resin rich in a couple areas, like down here. I'm not too worried about it because I've got balsa strips going in there. This cloth also, you'll brush some cloth on it or brush some resin on the cloth. It takes about a minute to soak through. Now that rudder, let's see what I do with it. That rudder I made, sitting around there somewhere, I'll show it to you, but it didn't have any pinholes. This style 120, it's got a really fine weave, and it's thin enough to where you don't have trouble getting your resin into it, and it's fine enough where I wasn't getting any pinholes. The drawback, it's just a little bit more expensive, but on the parts I'm making, I think it's worthwhile. Now on the balsa pieces, all I've done on the first one is I'll take these pre-cut them. And I'll brush a little resin on them. Doesn't take much. Lay it in there. Right here I tore up a little wood, which that's okay. I should have cut it just a little bit shorter. I might have to do the same here. Now, if this was the ultimate control line, you could go back to the process Joe Daly does with his airplane. He vacuum bags all this down. He puts it in a vacuum bag. And that takes all the excess resin, even if it's minute. Takes all the excess out of it. So I got that squished down fairly good. Since these are still sort of what I want to say, an experimental project, I'm not too worried about them. They could have been adjusted a little bit better, but it's okay. Let's see where we're at here. The other thing you could do instead of wiping plain resin on this wood is put a little Cavasil on it, micro balloons or whatever, thicken that up. Let's see, where am I at here? I got a short piece, and so now I'm coming up with pieces that are a little off. That's all right. I'll stick these in there anyway. For some reason these weren't cut just right. Oh, I know what I did wrong. It needs to go up here in the front. Got to get it on the hinge line. Something didn't look right. That's what it was. Get the glue on the right side here. So the whole idea to this, all this crazy stuff, is to actually get to the point where I've got it nailed down to do the full-size stunner at a competitive weight. I think what I'm going to do, since I can still do it, this one doesn't want to sit flat in the mold. I need to trim a little off of this. So I'll take it over here and trim it now while I can get to it. I'm just thinking that it's not going to make my life any good if I leave it like it was. There, that fits in there. That fits in there nice. Now, I've got it wet out, and it's a little resin rich for if you wanted to do a really high performance part, but for what I'm doing, it's perfect. So now I need to actually get a little Cavasil. Look at that, I just pulled all those bristles out. I'm getting another brush. Get a little Cavasil or micro. So the guys that mix this stuff up with filler, sometimes they put micro in there. Sometimes they put Cavasil, or they make a blend of all different stuff. So here's some from yesterday. It's really not fully cured. This was a blend of micro and Cavasil, and it looks like what I want to say, just sort of like a whipped cream. You know, you want it consistency where, you know, it holds its shape. When you put it in there, you don't want it to run. So I went to the local composite shop, bought me a gallon of Cabasil. They were pretty nice to me on the pricing of that. And then I also throw a little micro in there. The micro blends make it easy to sand. The Cabasil, it'll fluff it up a little bit, but it's still pretty stout. The Cabasil will make the resin where it doesn't run. It's a thickening agent. The microballoons will also act as somewhat of a thickening agent, but not to the extent that the microballoons will. So one of the things I did on my I got one in the hot box here. I can probably pull it out of the mold today. But one of the things I did, I laid up this cloth without a surface coat because of the weight savings. Normally I take a little bit of resin and I brush it in the mold to give you a skim coat for a surface coat. After doing these rudders, I don't think I need it with this resin and cloth. So my mold in the warming box is an experiment. The part is. See, it's getting there. A little bit thicker. Get this thing capped. I hate to drop this on the floor. Have a snowstorm in here. Same thing with micro. Stuff is so fine. I've never measured this by an exact amount. I just put it in there and go by the way it looks. So I've got a consistency now. It's even thicker. All right, so I didn't clean this brush out with acetone. I'll be all right with this. It's thick enough, it's not going to affect it. Now, some guys take this and they put it in a baggie and they snip the end off and they use like a cake decorating thing. Since I'm not worried about perfect placement, I'm not going to do that. I just brush it into these spots. You got to make sure I work it in where these little hinge pockets are up here. Part of the reasons why this mold has got the balsa wood here is the hinges. So when I run a hinge in this fiberglass part, I have a place for the hinge to glue to. Ideally, I should probably put the Cabasil in first, right in here before I put the balsa wood, so I make sure I get it in there. Might be some air bubbles in there. I'll be careful with it though. So just work it around the perimeter. The Cabasil is it forms the V on the leading edge of the rudder. Like I said, this little RC rudder and this little mold is the perfect test bed for release agents and everything. But so yesterday I wiped 2 more coats of free coat on this mold. Let it dry just on the safe side. once I get 2 or 3 really good pulls and it's popping out easy, then you can skip it. You can go without it. You don't have to put free coat in it every time. I'm sliding this around, make sure that I've got that Cavasil down around that wood. And what I do over here, I just go around the edge like this, and I brush it up on the side there. And I just put a fillet of Cavasil and resin right there. It'll be interesting to compare the weights. So far, the ones I made were overkill. So I try not to get too much down in the mold. What's on the mold face will probably end up going out, squeezing out. Got any? Not from the middle out. Tacking it from the sides with taps. The granularity of Cavasil, it's C-A-V-O-S-I-L. Cavasil is it's like the name Kleenex. It's somebody's proprietary name. Cavasil, generically, is called fumed silica. And they're probably like little flakes. They're about the size, or it's a little bit bigger than micro balloons in the size of the flake. It floats through the air. Somebody told me, or I read it online somewhere, there's a food grade product for Cavasil or fumed silica, and they put it in ketchup to make it, you know, the commercial where this ketchup manufacturer talks about how thick their ketchup is. they're pouring the ketchup. Pretty sure they just put Cavasil in it. So obviously not the same grade you put in epoxy. It's food grade. But yeah, I've probably eaten some Cavasil in my day. I was working for a trucking company and they had a pallet about 6 foot high of bags of Cavasil. And something got into the side of one of them bags, and it was, when they opened the door of the trailer, it's like it was a fog. The whole trailer was fogged out with Cavasil. You know, of course, on that level, you make sure you get a mask on and try to get in there and clean it up, but what a mess. Stuff gets in the air, it's so light. Yeah, dusty. Yeah. So this stuff, it's getting thicker right now. A little bit thicker. Okay, going back, this was the third one I make. So if I had to do this again after looking at it, I'd probably go ahead and put the fillet of Cavasil before I drop these balsa wood inserts in there. It'll probably be okay. I'm pretty careful because I'm sort of cognizant of what's going on down in that little groove. But if I had to do it over again, I'd put the Cavasil in there first and then lay the balsa on it. You'd get a better adhesion balsa to glass if you had a thicker resin in there. And then what I do, I'll build up a little extra here. When these two come together, it's going to be, the wood isn't going to meet. There's going to be a little gap between the layer of wood, which is all right. It's not going anywhere. It's encapsulated into this part. I'll brush a little extra right there. Like I said, it's probably just a tad on the heavy side because of the resin and the Cavusol, but and the key to get this whole thing working right is these pins. These little bumps that I made with sheet wax on the first layup actually go ahead and get this thing aligned. So far, on these 2 rudders I've made, it's been dead on. Even with the fact that there was some PVA in the mix, you know, to where the PVA was taking up room. So I'm putting a little bit extra here. It's where the leading edge of the rudder is. The micro makes this stuff a little bit lighter, but okay, that's all there is to it. So basically at this point, you just take it and close it, put the molds together, and then I clamp it with these little clamps. You could probably even use, you know, one of those metal clamps they use in offices, you know, go around the perimeter with it. I take these clamps, spring clamps, and I go on the bump, you know, the bump that keys it together right here. And since I got them laying around, I just stick these little Bessies in there. These almost look like toys. They're great for model airplanes because they're so small. They get in the small little spots, like if you're doing a fuselage or something. That's all there is to it. I'll take this thing and I'll put it in the warming box over there. I got a warming box that goes up to, I think I keep it at 95 or 100. It's great for stuff like this. I came out this morning in the box that I had underneath the bench here. The big warming box was 70 degrees. So going forward, you know, today I plugged it in for about an hour and got it up to about 90 and threw the stuff in there for a while to finish it off. Let me see, I'll pull that out real quick. This is the one I laid up yesterday. This is 2 layers instead of 3. Let's go through here, pop it off. Now ideally, it's like Kevin Matney, he's up in Michigan, he chimes in and he's 100% right. He does a wet lap, and what he's talking about on this mold, on a wet lap, he basically this glass comes out of the mold like this, maybe a ½ inch, I don't know what he's doing. You put the mold halves together just like I did with this rudder, but you hold this glass in, and then you could cut one side flush and then let the other stick out a ½ inch or an inch or whatever you wanted. Close the mold, but then you'd have to have access to the inside of the mold once it's closed with the glass, and then you take a brush and then you just wet lap it. So you just push the glass back down and it overlaps the glass and the other half of the mold. So that saves the taping of the halves together, and it saves the seam tape, and it cuts out a lot of time-consuming steps. But for that to work, you've got to make this mold to where you have access at the end or wherever to get to that wet lap. The people that actually do the wet lap with molds that you can't get to, basically they're putting a bladder in there. And by the bladder, well, it's a balloon type thing, and it expands. And when they expand it, it pushes the glass out. Now, it doesn't take much pressure. We're only talking about, 3 or 4 psi max, I'd imagine. But there's videos out there of, guys doing that. One video, it's a composite RC plane. I think it's like a little pylon racer or something. But the guy does that. He's got a little balloon. Another rabbit hole I'd love to go down, I haven't had time to do it, is what do they call it? Elastomers. As it relates to carbon fiber and mold making. So that would tell you, hopefully you'd gain enough knowledge to actually make your bladders. So I got this thing pulled up here. There's a little bit right there. You see where it's dark? Just pop that loose. Work it around. Comes right out. Now this has got PVA on it. Now this is pretty decent here. This is 2 layers. And then I put 3 in the nose, the wing saddle, and I ran a 3rd layer, a strip right here, a little bit of torsional resistance, and it looks flimsy because it is, but once you get these 2 halves glued together, and then it becomes really good. Now, as far as the sides, there's going to be a little bit here, but not too much. It's not too mushy. And let's say you get to this point and you build it and you think, it's a little flimsy. You can always take carbon toe or more glass and put a little bit more in here or there after the halves are joined, ideally, or stick it back in the mold and do it. But I think after the molds are joined, after the halves are joined together, you can go back in there and put more. This 3.2 style 120, believe it or not, was able to make this radius in the saddle without any cavasil. The conformability of this fabric is unbelievable. How well it conforms to these tight bends. So I'm happy with that. So all I do now, I don't clean up too much. What I do is I just go around the perimeter and clean it, and there's still, I just don't worry about way out here. I take this Formica. It's a template material I was making wing ribs out of for foam cutters, and it's got the right density to where when I scrape this mold, it doesn't scratch it. And you can refile this Formica, make a sharper point or a rounded edge or whatever. But this is what I like to scrape the PVA and the resin off. And I clean it up a couple inches out. But the way this mold is designed with this flange, it's set up the vacuum bag. So I can run the tacky tape around this thing here, and then bag this part down in here. It's hollow on the bottom. You can sort of see here where it's got this flange. So it wouldn't be suitable for a vacuum tube. It would probably want to, it would do it, but you got to be careful you don't have little shards and puncture the bag. You could probably put some kind of breather on the back to soften it. But maybe the next step, if I wanted to really kill her apart, I can vacuum bag inside of this mold. Overkill for the RC stick fuse, but it would be a good experiment. Preferable to not have an elastic balloon which will move the wetted fiber around. Yeah, I know what you mean, Mike. I think it's Mike. You'd have to be really careful. I know they do it, but I'm not sure how they do it. without distorting the glass. When I take a fuselage half like this and I tape it together, I can see 100% where that seam is, and I can retape it or whatever I need to do, and then gently put the seam tape. So I can control that seam. If you do the bladder method or a lot of these things in the mold where you can't really see it, you have the possibility of, messing it up. But so you get a pucker or air bubble on the seam or something, does it ruin it? No, just fill it up with a little bit of a Bondo or mix up Cavasil Micro or whatever and go over it. It's all repairable. It's all workable and usable, but if you're trying to do this, which I'm not, but if you're trying to do it as a production to where you're making money in a shop, you want the thing to come out of the mold as close to perfect as you can get it, because it cuts down all the stuff you got to do on the side. So this is my 6th one. It's probably the lightest. So I keep whittling it down. What's funny though, as I'm doing this stuff, I pretty much knew what they were doing with the amount of glass, the core material. Instead of starting there, which what I would, and then it says OBS disconnected, OBS reconnected. Yeah. So what just happened on this OBS is it dropped out on me and it reconnected. So I'll go back and watch the original here and see how much of it took. And that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. Just a chit chat, lay this thing up. But I think we're in a good spot. I mean, it gets discouraging because there's no hobby shops or there's no traditional things like we thought they used to be. But it's still out there, guys. It's you have to dig for it. I remember when I was probably in the 70s and 80s, you didn't have much choice. If you wanted a big, huge airplane, you had to have a gear drive. And you had peanut scale, free flight, and you had control line and RC. And RC was basically two choices, 35 to 40 or 60. If you had a 60 size RC plane, it was like a big one. And then if you wanted a micro park flyer, you had these half A motors, which were, you couldn't throttle them reliably. But today you've got everything you had back then, but you've got electric, you got park flyers, you got the foamies. If you don't want to build, you bind and fly. Flex Innovation and Hobby, all these places that have super high performance stuff for what you have to spend to build it is cheap and it's replaceable. And then if you want to actually build, you can still build, not as much balsa is cheap, but there's more stuff out there, like this. I tell you, if you go back and watch some of my videos, I've got videos of me making this, tell you the exact surface code, the resin, everything. So it's all out there, and it's a great time to be in the hobby. So with that being said, I'm going to jump off here. Thanks for watching this crazy stuff and listening to me rattle on. There's more talk than build, but keep the wind at your back and the sun at your face. See you guys later.